They gave their mother a mug that said, "Reason for all our problems." She smiled, served dinner, and didn't say a word. By morning, the will was rewritten. The house reassigned. Not out of anger, but clarity. She had spent a lifetime giving. Now she was done explaining. When they came looking for their share, the paperwork had already answered. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The Abbott living room shimmered with soft golds and reds. The tree, over-decorated with mismatched ornaments and an aggressive tinsel job by Riley, glowed in the corner like a beacon of forced cheer. Bing Crosby crooned low from the record player. A honey-glazed ham rested in the oven, its scent creeping into the corners of the room like a memory no one had invited. June sat cross-legged on the floor, a half-finished peppermint tea steaming beside her. Her cheeks were flushed, not from the fire, but from the pressure of holding this family together with duct tape and holiday sweaters. She picked up a small box wrapped in brown craft paper and tied with twine, and handed it to Heather. "For your new place," she said softly. Heather opened it and gasped. A folded hand-stitched quilt in deep navy, stitched with a pattern of stars and hidden messages. Heather's childhood doodles, preserved in thread. Her fingers lingered on one, the jagged cartoon of her first dog, Max. "You remembered," her voice cracked. "Course I did," June said, brushing hair behind her ear. "I remember everything that matters." Heather didn't look her in the eye. She just nodded, slowly, and set the quilt on her lap like something holy. Next was Riley. June handed her a slim box. Inside was a leather-bound copy of Wuthering Heights, pressed flowers between some of the pages, and Riley's name embossed in gold on the front. "You gave me this when I was 14, Riley said, a little stunned. "The one I lost when I moved to LA. June smiled, small and tired. "I found another edition from the same print year. Thought it was time it came home." Riley looked at her mother for a long moment, something unreadable flashing in her eyes. "That's thoughtful, Mom." Emily was last. She opened her package slowly, an old tin recipe box, dented in the corner with index cards inside. Each one labeled in June's precise cursive. Emily flipped through. Dad's Sunday chili, Nana's sweet rolls, Emily's sulky day lasagna. Her hand trembled. "You kept these?" "Never stopped," June said. "Didn't know if you'd want them, but—" Emily didn't respond. She set the box aside and turned away, blinking too fast. Riley took a quick sip of wine and cleared her throat. "Well," she said with a mischievous grin, "your turn, Mom." June raised an eyebrow. "You got me something?" Riley leaned forward and slid a small box across the hardwood floor like it was a chess move. "We all got you something," she said. With a glance toward Heather and Emily, June hesitated. The room felt suddenly too still. She reached for the box, peeled back the gold paper, and opened the lid. Inside was a ceramic mug. White, plain. The words stamped in black across the front. "Reason for all our problems, since 1949. Silence." Then Riley laughed. "Come on, that's funny," Heather chuckled, less certainly. "Well, it's not wrong." June's hand didn't move. Her fingers stayed curled around the mug like it might bite. The lights twinkled. The fireplace popped. The record crackled and flipped to silence. Emily stood up too fast. Her face had gone pale, and her jaw was clenched so tight it made her temples twitch. "That's enough." "Oh, don't act surprised," Riley said, her voice too bright. "She wanted honesty. Remember?" Emily turned sharply, eyes wet and furious. "That's not honesty. That's cruelty dressed up in wrapping paper." Heather stood too. "It was a joke." "No," Emily snapped. "It was a hit job." June didn't say a word. She set the mug down on the coffee table, slowly, deliberately. Her face had gone unreadable, blank, porcelain. A kind of eerie calm settled over her like frost on glass. "I made you all gifts with my hands," she said quietly. "You gave me a punchline." "No one meant it like that," Riley muttered, but even she wasn't sure anymore. June rose, slow and steady, and walked toward the kitchen. The timer for the ham went off with a shrill beep, but she didn't flinch. She opened the oven door, heat blasting against her face, and stared at the bubbling glaze as if it were a portal to somewhere quieter. Behind her, no one moved. She turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel, voice calm as ice. "Dinner's ready." And then she smiled, wide, polite, unnervingly pleasant. Just before turning away, she added, almost offhand, "Funny, I almost forgot what I'd planned for dessert." The house was silent again. Not festive silence. This was the hush that comes after the last guest leaves a funeral. The dishes from dinner sat rinsed but unwashed in the sink. The scent of ham still lingered faintly, clinging to the corners like shame. June stood at the kitchen counter, barefoot in her plaid nightgown, reading glasses perched low on her nose. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound as she slid the manila folder toward her. Her hands moved without hesitation now. She clicked the pen. Tommy leaned against the door frame, still wearing his jacket, half-buttoned and smelling like the cold. His voice was low, careful. "You really want to do this tonight?" She didn't look up. "There's nothing left to wait for." He watched her a long moment. "They'll never see it coming." She signed the last page in 2 quick strokes. "Good." Tommy stepped closer, arms crossed. "You sure you're done giving?" "I'm done," she said, flipping the folder shut. "I'm done being laughed at in rooms I paid for." Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even bitter. It was quiet steel, clean, finished. Not a threat, but a fact. Tommy exhaled through his nose and gave a short nod. "Okay." She opened the drawer by the stove, took out a small brass key, and walked over to the cabinet near the pantry. The wood paneling there was seamless unless you knew where to look. An old contractor's trick her late husband thought was clever. She pressed her palm to the top right corner and the panel clicked. Behind it, a gray steel safe blinked awake with a soft beep. June turned the knob, punched in the code, and opened it. Inside, only a few items. A bundle of old letters, a faded deed, and now this new will, freshly notarized, already copied and scanned. She slid the signed document in and locked it. Tommy tilted his head. "You really think Riley thought she had it locked down?" June gave a half smile. "She's always assumed the house was hers, because she talked the loudest." Tommy snorted. "That girl's been cashing emotional checks with your name on 'em for years." June shut the cabinet. Let her be shocked. Let her scream. He looked at her with something close to admiration. "And Emily?" June's face softened just slightly. She was the only one who pushed back tonight. Not for herself, for me. She paused. She didn't laugh. A beat passed between them. Tommy opened his mouth to speak, but June's phone lit up on the counter. Riley, calling. June let it ring. The vibrating buzz echoed through the kitchen like an old alarm she'd stopped caring to answer. Tommy raised an eyebrow. "You want me to?" "No," she said. Let her sit in it. The call ended. A text appeared seconds later. "If you're mad, just say it. Don't do that thing where you go weird and martyry." June read it, deleted it. Silence returned. She turned to Tommy. "I want it airtight. No loopholes, no challenges. It's already done. She could hire every lawyer in the county. Wouldn't matter. You've got dated backups, signatures, even a witness statement if we need it." June nodded, satisfied. "Then we're finished." Tommy took a step toward the hallway. "I'll let myself out." But before he reached the door, she added softly, "Next week, I want to list the house." He stopped. Turned. "Before they know?" "I want it sold before they've even realized it's not theirs." Tommy whistled low. "Cold." June shook her head slowly. "No. Clean." As he stepped outside and the door clicked shut behind him, June leaned her back against the counter. Her nightgown brushed against her ankles like a second skin. She looked around the kitchen, her kitchen, for what she knew could be the last winter she ever spent here. But the warmth was gone. And she wasn't staying anywhere she had to explain herself to ghosts. From the hallway came a quiet sound. Bare feet. Emily stood there, blinking sleep from her eyes. "Mom?" June didn't flinch. "Couldn't sleep either," Emily shook her head. "I had a weird feeling." June's voice was steady. "You were right to speak up tonight." Emily stepped farther into the light. "You okay?" June nodded once, slowly. "I will be." But in the deep quiet that followed, neither of them moved, until Emily noticed the key still sitting in her mother's palm. "Mom, what did you lock up?" June didn't answer. She just held up the key, dangled it once like bait, and smiled. Sunday morning broke with thin light and a hard frost, the kind that turned car windshields into glass canvases of white lace. June had always loved this time of year, quiet, crisp, with everything suspended like the world was holding its breath. Now it felt like being watched. The calls started around 7:10 a.m., first from Karen Duncan, her old church friend who usually only rang to share gossip disguised as prayer requests. "Just checking in," Karen said too sweetly. "You okay? Heard Christmas was eventful." June kept her voice calm. "We're fine, Karen. Thank you." Next came a message from Harold, the usher with the creaky knees. "Hey June, saw something online. Just want you to know I'm praying for peace in your home." Then Beverly from the Wednesday soup kitchen. "Not everything posted in public stays private, hun. If you need to talk, I'm around." June didn't ask what they'd seen. She didn't have to. By noon, Emily had driven over with her laptop balanced in one arm and her coat still half-zipped. Her expression was twisted somewhere between panic and heartbreak. "I didn't post it," Emily said, before she'd even stepped fully into the house. "I didn't laugh. I swear I didn't." June took a slow sip of coffee and held her gaze. "I know." Emily looked relieved, but her hands still shook slightly as she set the laptop down on the kitchen table and spun it toward her mother. The post was up on Facebook, Riley's account, a photo of the mug positioned center frame on the coffee table. The caption read, "When your mom is the gift and the curse, your Christmas with a bang, Abbott family drama." There were 317 likes, 62 comments, and climbing. Riley had replied to one with, "Honestly, Mom's probably going to leave everything to the church anyway." Another comment from Heather's sister read, "LMAO, she can't take a joke, but she can take the fun." Emily winced. "I told her not to post anything. I told her it was too far." June set her mug down gently. "That's why I didn't remove your name." Emily blinked, startled. "What?" June's eyes didn't waver. "In the will." The silence that followed was deep and raw. "I didn't know there was a will," Emily said, almost whispering. "There's always a will," June replied. "It's just a matter of when it hardens." Emily swallowed hard. "They'll think I asked for it." June stood, walked over, and closed the laptop without looking again. "Let them think what they want. You stayed after the laughter. That's the difference." Emily opened her mouth to speak, but the chime on June's phone cut her off. June picked it up, expecting another message from the church ladies or a neighbor trying to get close enough to collect gossip firsthand. But it wasn't. It was Carmen. "You okay?" Just that. No emojis, no judgment. Just someone who knew better than to pretend everything could be swept under a rug. June stared at the message for a long time. Her thumb hovered, then typed, "You saw the post?" The dots danced. Carmen was already responding. "Yeah, doesn't matter. People forget what loyalty looks like." June smiled. Small but real. Emily leaned on the counter, rubbing her temples. "They're going to flip out." June looked up at her daughter. "Let them. Sometimes the tree has to burn before anything new grows." As if on cue, a knock landed on the front door. 3 hard raps, no hesitation. Emily's eyes went wide. "Already?" June stepped around her, calm and collected, and opened the door. Heather stood there, wrapped in a long beige trench, her phone in one hand and a look that flickered between guilt and fury. "Can we talk?" June tilted her head just slightly. "Depends. On what?" "On whether this is an apology," she said, stepping aside. "Or another performance." Heather didn't move. Behind her, a silver Lexus pulled up. "Riley." She stepped out slowly, sunglasses still on despite the gray afternoon light, waving at Heather like it was choreographed. June watched them both for a long, still moment, and then she turned to Emily. "Go open the safe," she said, voice low. Emily blinked. "Now?" June nodded, eyes never leaving the porch. "They wanted attention," she said. "Let's give them something worth looking at." By Monday morning, the porch had been cleared of snow, but not of drama. Heather and Riley hadn't stayed long the night before, just enough time to air their suspicions, drop veiled insults, and storm off in matching coats. The mug had become infamous now. The post? Still climbing in shares. June had stopped counting at 600. But she wasn't watching numbers. She was watching time. June sat at the dining room table in the soft light of dawn. A thick folder opened before her, pages fanned out like tarot cards, ready to seal someone's fate. Her name was at the top of every form. Every line of power of attorney, ownership, and executor's authority led back to her signature. Not one of them had ever asked to see it. Tommy sat across from her, clicking through his tablet. Beneficiary updates are finalized. They're out. June didn't need to ask who they were. Good, he nodded. And the house deed transfer's ready to go. It'll activate upon death. Standard survivorship clause. Emily's name only. June looked out the window where Emily stood in the backyard, her hands tucked into her coat sleeves, staring at the dormant garden beds like they held some ancient answer. She didn't know yet, not the full scope. She won't ask for it, June said softly. That's why she deserves it, Tommy replied. Inside, the heater clicked on. Outside, a squirrel darted along the fence line, tail twitching like it knew something was about to shift. Later that afternoon, Heather called. Not to apologize, just to pry. June answered on the third ring. Hey, Heather said, voice breezy and bright like a real estate agent. So I was just thinking, if you need help organizing like bills or, any of the paperwork stuff after the holidays, I can come by. June smiled to herself, then answered plainly. Don't worry, it's all handled. A pause. Handled like you've got it sorted? Or like legally handled? Yes, June said. Exactly. She hung up before Heather could twist herself into another question disguised as concern. By evening, the Lexus was back. Riley didn't come inside this time. She stayed in the car, sunglasses still on, scrolling on her phone while Heather knocked. June didn't answer the door. She just let it echo once, twice. They left after 5 minutes. She heard the engine rev as Riley peeled off faster than the icy road advised. Heather followed, no note left behind. Back in the kitchen, Emily walked in with a half-folded blanket in her arms. They were outside again, she said. I know. They're spiraling, Emily added. They're scared. June folded the last of the laundry and set it aside. They're not scared I'll die. They're scared I'll do it without giving them what they think they're owed. Emily didn't respond. She just sat, quiet, running her fingers over the hem of the quilt in her lap, the one June had sewn for Heather, forgotten already. I don't want the house, Emily said suddenly. Not like this. Not if it makes them think I conned you or something. You didn't ask for anything. That doesn't mean they won't say it. June looked her daughter in the eyes. They've been telling stories for years. Let them. A knock came at the side door, gentler this time. Emily peeked through the curtain. It's Tommy. June opened the door and let him in. He carried an envelope in one hand and a USB drive in the other. All signed and filed, he said, handing her the envelope. Deed, life insurance, land trust. Everything split from now until the day you stop breathing. June took it without ceremony. And Riley. Name removed. Same with Heather. You're the only trustee, and Emily's the only one named in survivorship. Bank records match, and your lawyer has the hard copies. Emily blinked. Wait, life insurance too? Tommy gave her a polite nod. Whole policy. Emily looked to June. Why would you give me all of it? June set the envelope on the counter, pressed her hand over it like sealing a wound. Because you were the only one who asked if I was okay before asking what I had. Silence settled thick between them. Tommy checked his watch. All right, I'll get out of your hair. Let me know when it's time for phase 2. June gave a short nod. Emily looked between them. Phase 2? June didn't answer. She just turned, opened the drawer by the fridge, and took out a battered spiral notebook, the one with the red elastic band wrapped around it. Emily had seen it once, years ago. It was her father's. Mom, she asked, voice low, what is that? June unwound the elastic. Inside were names, dates, amounts, handwriting rough and angular, all caps, debt owed, favors cashed, secrets promised, a private record, a history no one thought she'd keep. By Wednesday, the living room looked more like a moving sale than a holiday home. The antique hutch that once held heirloom china now stood empty, its glass doors ajar like lungs exhaling history. Framed photos of vacations no one remembered taking sat stacked in boxes near the door. The faded blue armchair where June's late husband used to read the AO paper had been quietly donated that morning, its absence leaving a bare spot on the rug like a pulled tooth. Emily stood at the bottom of the stairs, watching as June rolled bubble wrap around the porcelain angel figurines from the mantel. The ones Riley used to pretend were superheroes. The ones Heather once knocked over during a fight and blamed on the cat. "You're really doing it," Emily said. June didn't pause. "I told you, I'm not waiting for permission anymore." Outside, Carmen's station wagon idled in the driveway. The hatch was open. Blankets, boxes, and crates were already packed tight, organized with the same precision June used to apply to church bake sales and tax season. Heather arrived first. She didn't knock, just burst in, cheeks pink from the cold, an expression sharp enough to cut drywall. "What the hell is going on?" she asked, eyes scanning the half-packed dining room. June looked up calmly. "Morning, Heather." "No, seriously. Are you losing your mind?" Heather's voice rose, shrill and too loud in the nearly empty room. "You're giving things away, family pieces, the rocking chair, Nana's punch bowl?" "It's just stuff." Heather's hands went to her hips. "It's our stuff." June took a deep breath and returned to wrapping another glass ornament. "You mean my stuff, that I've kept, cleaned, paid for, and stored for decades. The things no one cared about until they started disappearing." As if summoned by the noise, Riley strolled in behind her sister, still dressed in leggings and a designer hoodie. A cup of iced coffee in hand despite the frost outside. "You're not dying," she said, walking past them both. "So why act like it?" June set the ornament down and finally stood straight, hands still wrapped in crinkled plastic. "I'm not dying," she said. "I'm downsizing." Riley rolled her eyes. "This is dramatic." "So is mocking your own mother on the internet," June replied, her voice like stone, wrapped in velvet. Riley flinched, just for a second. Then she sipped her coffee and looked away. Heather pivoted to Emily. "You're just letting her do this?" "I'm helping her," Emily said. "There's a difference." Riley threw her hands up. "This is insane. Next she'll be selling the house to a stranger." Emily opened her mouth, but June cut in before she could speak. "No," she said. "I'm not selling it to a stranger." Riley narrowed her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before June could respond, Tommy stepped through the side door carrying a box labeled China Fragile. He paused, catching the mood like a static charge. "Well," he said with a half grin, "I see the audience arrived early." Heather turned to him. "Can you talk some sense into her?" He raised an eyebrow. "Lady knows what she's doing." Riley's face darkened. "You're all enabling this." June walked toward the front hall, picked up a small wooden box, the one that once held her wedding rings, now empty, and placed it into Carmen's waiting hands outside the door. "You're not just cleaning house," Tommy said behind her, tone lower now. "You're cleaning history." June met his eyes. "I'm curating it." They all turned as Carmen came back up the steps. "That's the last load I can take today." June nodded, her voice steady. "That's fine. Next batch will be ready tomorrow." Carmen looked between Riley and Heather. "They didn't know," June smiled tightly. "They know now." Heather folded her arms. "This is about the mug, isn't it?" June stepped forward, face inches from her daughter's. "No, sweetheart. That mug was just the match. The fire's been coming for years." Riley scoffed. "So what? Now Emily gets everything and we just get cardboard boxes and guilt?" June looked between them. "You got laughter, you got distance, you got time. Emily got me, and that's something neither of you ever really wanted." Riley blinked like she'd been slapped. Heather turned, furious and red-faced, storming toward the door. "You'll regret this," she hissed. June didn't flinch. I already regretted staying silent. As the door slammed behind them, Carmen gave June a sideways glance. "They're gonna come harder now. Lawyers, screaming, maybe worse." June didn't respond. She just walked back to the living room, stepped over the empty rug where the armchair used to be, and opened the red notebook again. This time, she flipped to a page near the back. A name circled in black ink, underlined twice. Emily caught a glimpse of it. "Who's Daniel Rhodes?" June tore the page from the spiral, folded it in half, and tucked it into her pocket. "Someone I owed a visit," she said. The knock didn't come this time. Riley barged straight into the house like she still had keys to June's authority, slamming the front door hard enough to make the wall clock stutter. Her boots tracked salt and snow across the hardwood as she stomped toward the stairs, jaw locked tight. "Mom!" she yelled. "Where are you?" Emily stepped out from the kitchen, instinctively blocking the stairwell. "She's resting." Riley brushed past her without a word, the anger giving her tunnel vision. Upstairs, June's bedroom was half lit by the soft winter sun spilling through lace curtains. She sat at her vanity, quietly pinning her hair up. Calm, steady. A woman preparing for the day, not a battle. "You're packing, you're throwing things out, you're giving things away." Riley's voice cracked as it rose. "You've lost it." June didn't turn. "I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" Riley stepped forward, arms flailing. "Because from the outside, it looks like you're dismantling your life piece by piece." June finally turned. Her voice was quiet, clear. "I gave you decades. I'm keeping the rest for myself." Riley blinked, stunned. "I'm your daughter." "You're entitled to love, not to legacy," June said, standing. The two are not the same. Downstairs, Heather was already on the phone. Emily overheard just enough as she passed the living room to hear the phrases elder manipulation and mental clarity assessments. She paused, heart sinking. Heather caught her glance and turned the volume down, pretending the call had just ended. "Just trying to get clarity," Heather said coolly. "It's moving fast. People get confused, especially at that age." Emily stared at her half-sister for a long beat. "She's not confused. You just don't like the version of her that isn't handing you things." Outside, the driveway filled again. Tommy stepped out of his truck with a thick folder tucked under one arm and his signature thermos in the other. His coat was still dusted with sawdust and morning frost. He entered through the side door, nodded at Emily, and made his way to the dining table like he'd lived there his whole life. He opened the folder without a word. Sealed documents, witness logs, medical evaluations, a full mental competency review performed voluntarily last month. He slid one page forward, tapping the heading with his finger. Capacity to execute estate planning documents, affirmed. Then another, gift intent letter, legally binding, and another, power of attorney, revocation of prior, activation of current. Tommy didn't even look up. "Let them try. You're bulletproof." June entered the room a moment later, shawl wrapped around her shoulders, eyes flicking briefly to the paperwork before landing on Emily. "You ready?" she asked. "For what?" June smiled faintly. "I'm going to the church potluck. Thought you might come." Emily hadn't expected that. 10 minutes later, the two of them were in June's old Buick, pulling out of the driveway as Riley watched from the porch, arms crossed, phone in hand. The potluck buzzed with crock-pots and laughter. It smelled like chili and old perfume and vanilla sheet cake. People smiled, but they didn't rush. There was no pity parade, just warmth. June made her way toward the back, slow but graceful, nodding at familiar faces. When she reached the dessert table, someone asked if she remembered the last time she'd brought her famous apple butter rolls. "Don't remind me," June said with a grin. That batch could have been used to patch drywall. Laughter broke around her. It wasn't polite or careful, it was real. A woman nearby nearly choked on her cornbread. Emily, seated at the folding table across the room, caught it, that laugh. That deep, belly-rooted sound she hadn't heard in years. Her mother, this woman wrapped in woven pain and old grace, was laughing. Not out of politeness, not to smooth something over, but for herself. Emily blinked hard. Tommy nudged her gently. "Told you she wasn't broken." Outside, the parking lot dimmed into the soft purple of evening. Inside, June served her green bean casserole to a group of teens like a retired queen, reclaiming her kingdom. But back at the house, headlights rolled silently up the street. Heather's husband Matt stepped out. He wore a long coat and carried a slim leather briefcase, the kind not meant for church. He paused on the porch, looked around, then opened the Abbott mailbox and dropped in a manila envelope. It happened between the cereal aisle and checkout lane 6 at Granger's Market. June had gone alone. She didn't like making a fuss, and she liked asking for help even less. She'd meant to just grab milk, rye bread, and apples. Nothing that should have knocked her off her feet. But when the fluorescent lights began to strobe at the edges of her vision, and the linoleum under her boots seemed to pitch like a boat deck, she knew she'd waited too long to eat. Her knees gave before she could ask for help. A stock boy with a nose ring caught her elbow too late. The last thing June saw was the Lucky Charms display blinking in and out like static. She came to in the ER, wedged between white curtains and a beeping monitor. The smell of antiseptic was thick, and her fingers were stiff from the IV line taped into her hand. A young nurse hovered nearby. "Low blood sugar," the nurse said gently. "You fainted, that's all. Do you have someone we can call?" "I already did," came a voice from the doorway. Carmen stood holding a reusable grocery bag, her coat unzipped, snow still melting in patches on her shoulders. June tried to sit up. "I'm fine." "You fainted in a cereal aisle," Carmen replied, placing the bag on the rolling tray table. "You're not fine." Inside, homemade chicken soup in a mason jar, a pair of thick wool socks, and a small white envelope marked "If you're stubborn." "Don't open that unless you're about to do something dumb," Carmen said, sitting down. June smiled despite herself. They sat in a comfortable quiet, the kind of silence that only old friends with nothing to prove can share. Half an hour passed. Then came the tap-tap-tap of fast shoes down the hallway. Riley entered, her coat too expensive for the weather, phone clenched in her hand like a weapon. "Oh my God, Mom!" She rushed to the foot of the bed. "Why didn't anyone call me?" "I'm here," June said quietly. "Now you know." Riley exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. But the moment passed too fast. "Where's the paperwork?" she asked. Carmen blinked, rising from her chair. "Excuse me." "The folder, the one from the lawyer, with the house stuff, the new trust, or whatever." Riley's voice was flat, practiced. "I just want to make sure she wasn't manipulated into signing things under stress. I mean, look at her." June didn't speak. She just reached for the bedside table, picked up the hospital-issued styrofoam mug of coffee, cold and stale by now, and held it out to Riley. Riley hesitated, confused. "What's that?" "You wanted something," June said, pressing the cup into her hand. "So take it." Riley stood frozen, holding the mug like it was filled with poison. Carmen moved toward her slowly. "You can go now. I'm her daughter. You're here for documents. That's different." Riley didn't argue. She turned, jaw clenched, and left without another word. That night, Emily sat at the kitchen table with June's phone in her hand, rereading the text from Heather that had just arrived. "Heather, any updates on if she changed anything? Like insurance stuff or title stuff? Just trying to plan ahead. Let me know, okay?" Emily stared at the message for a long time, then opened the options menu. Blocked. She didn't say anything out loud. She didn't sigh or celebrate or cry. She just set the phone down beside her mother's red notebook, folded her hands, and watched the quiet house breathe. June was asleep upstairs, her color better, her appetite returning in tiny spoonfuls. Emily rose, walked to the window, and peeked through the curtain. Across the street, Heather's car was parked with its lights off, watching, waiting. Emily didn't look away. She just reached up and pulled the curtain closed. The front door creaked open at 8:12 a.m. Riley entered first, jangling the spare key like it gave her the right to be there. Heather followed, phone already in hand, thumbing through voicemails and muttering under her breath. "Just said she needed space," Heather said. "Didn't say vanish off the grid." They walked through the front hall like strangers in a museum. The boxes were gone. The sofa was covered in a white sheet. The house smelled faintly of lemon oil and cinnamon, but underneath that, emptiness. No radio humming, no kettle whistling, no June. Heather opened a drawer near the entry table, nothing inside but an empty notepad and 2 dead pens. She cleared everything. Riley stepped into the kitchen, then stopped cold. A single note was stuck to the fridge with a cherry magnet. "Not missing, just done. J." Heather read it over her shoulder. "What the hell does that mean?" Riley turned slowly. "It means she walked away, and didn't feel the need to tell us where." Heather opened every cabinet. She took the will, the files, the binder, everything. "She took her dignity," Riley muttered, "and she left." 2 miles away, Emily sat at her kitchen table, the morning sun filtering in as she stared down at a small padded envelope, addressed in her mother's careful cursive. Inside was a key. A short note was paperclipped to it. "The cabinet is yours now. You'll know what to do with it." "Mom." Emily rose, heart thudding quietly against her ribs, walked down the hall, and opened the cabinet June had always kept locked but never hidden. She'd passed it 1,000 times without asking. The key slid in clean. Inside were the originals, the updated will, the property transfer forms, the photos of June with her parents, with Emily as a baby, with Carmen at a protest in '92. A timeline built from paper and grief and resolve. Emily sat down on the floor in front of the open cabinet, cross-legged, and exhaled. For the first time, she didn't feel like a daughter trying to understand her mother. She felt like a woman picking up where another left off. By noon, Riley had filed a petition with the county court, motion to review will on grounds of mental incapacitation. Heather drove her there. They didn't speak the whole ride back. The very next day, the filing was answered by a single-page affidavit from Tommy Warner, hand-delivered and time-stamped. It included notarized evaluations, digital voice recordings, video of June reviewing the documents, and reading her own statement aloud. The judge never even scheduled a hearing. That night, Heather lit up Facebook like a flare gun. "I hope someday your mom doesn't erase you from her life for having a bad sense of humor. And if she does, I hope she at least gives you a heads up." Family is supposed to mean something. The comment section did not go how she hoped. "So, your mom gives you handmade gifts, and you give her a mug calling her the problem, and now you want sympathy?" Riley's post was disgusting. "That wasn't humor, that was bullying. You just didn't expect consequences. I used to work with June. She was the backbone of that office. Don't act like she lost her mind. She found her spine." Heather deleted the post within hours, but the screenshots circulated anyway. Small towns remember what people hope they'll forget. At the edge of town, on Carmen's back porch, June sat with a blanket over her legs and cocoa in hand. The birds had found the feeder again, little brown sparrows and one very fat cardinal who always landed like he owned the place. "They'll tear each other up now," Carmen said softly, settling beside her with her own mug. "You sure you're ready for that?" June sipped. "They're grown. They want to fight over the ashes. Let them." Carmen studied her for a long moment. "And Emily?" June's eyes softened, just a flicker. "She's not fighting, she's building." The sky was pale and cloudless, the kind of cold that made your breath look like smoke. From inside the house, a landline rang once, then stopped. Carmen reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. "This came this morning. Postmarked out of state. No return address. Thought it smelled fishy." June unfolded the paper. It was typed. "You think locking a cabinet protects a lifetime of secrets? You can't bury what you don't understand." There was no signature, but June's face didn't change. Instead, she turned to Carmen, slowly. "I think we just heard from Daniel Rhodes." It started quietly, no press release, no ribbon cutting. Just a soft announcement on the town library's Facebook page, posted by a librarian who didn't realize what kind of storm she was about to unleash. The Abbott Literacy Endowment. "We are humbled to announce the establishment of a new reading program and Children's Corner, made possible by a $112,400 donation in honor of longtime resident June Abbott and her daughter Emily." Emily saw the post over coffee, bleary-eyed and half-distracted by morning emails. It took her 3 reads to realize what she was looking at. The number, the names, the picture of the smiling librarian holding a giant cardboard check with June Abbott Fund, written in tidy blue calligraphy. Her mug hit the table harder than she meant. Carmen was the one who picked up on her silence. "What is it?" Emily turned the phone toward her. Carmen smiled slowly. "Oh, she really did it. She never told me," Emily whispered. "All those nights she said she was just getting her paperwork in order. She was building this." Across town, Heather and Riley found out the same way, through their phones. Heather was at work, mid-meeting, when her co-worker leaned over and showed her the article. Riley was in the drive-thru at Starbucks. By noon, the group chat was alive again for the first time in weeks. "Riley, you seeing this?" Heather, "She donated the money, all of it." Riley, "Our money. That was supposed to come to us. Heather, she just did this to spite us. Riley didn't respond right away. When she did, the tone had changed. Riley, we should have stopped her when we had the chance. By 2 o'clock, Tommy had already driven to Carmen's house. The old Buick sat in the gravel driveway, sun glinting off its cracked windshield. Inside, June was at the kitchen table with a notepad, calmly writing thank you notes to the library staff. Tommy leaned against the counter, arms folded. You know, you could have told me you were going to nuke their inheritance. June didn't look up. You would have tried to talk me out of it. He chuckled. Maybe, or maybe I just wanted a front row seat. Carmen poured him a cup of coffee and slid into the seat across from June. They're losing their minds, you know. Facebook's melting down again. Heather's already claiming she's going to fight the donation. Tommy barked a laugh. You can't fight a donation, that's the beauty of it. It's final, public, and noble looking. June sealed an envelope. It's not noble, it's practical. Children won't waste what my daughters would have. Carmen's eyes softened. You call it relief. June smiled faintly. Exactly. Tommy nodded toward the window. And Riley? She called the bank. I expected that. She's convinced you were manipulated. Wants proof you were of sound mind. June looked up then, and the steel in her gaze returned. She's been underestimating my mind her entire life. Let her try one more time. The next morning, Emily stopped by the library. The air inside smelled of old paper and lemon cleaner, and the sound of soft voices echoed through the children's wing. A small plaque had already been mounted near the front desk. The Abbott reading program for the ones who stayed to listen. Emily touched the brass letters with trembling fingers. The line hit her harder than she expected. Carmen had come with her and was watching from the corner. You okay? Emily nodded. She didn't build this for herself. No, Carmen said. She built it so you'd never have to explain who you came from. Through the glass wall of the library's entryway, they could see Riley's car parked at the curb. Heather sat in the passenger seat, phone in hand, filming. Unbelievable, Carmen muttered. They're really doing it. Emily turned toward the librarian, who had just come from the back office carrying 2 boxes of donated books. Could you do me a favor? Emily asked. Don't let them inside today. Tell them there's an event or something. The librarian nodded quickly. Of course. Riley's horn blared once, sharp and demanding. Emily didn't move. She watched through the glass as Riley rolled down the window and shouted something muffled. Heather's face was red, furious, unreadable. Carmen stepped beside Emily. They're gonna spin this 100 ways, you know. Emily smiled faintly. They can spin it all they want. Outside, Riley revved the engine. You can keep your stupid library, she shouted. That money should have gone to us, Carmen called back through the doorway before the librarian could close it. No, sweetheart, you earned this. Then softer, turning to Emily. They call it revenge, but your mom, she called it peace. The horn blared again, then silence. Riley's car peeled away, leaving the parking lot empty except for a few drifting leaves and the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. Inside, Emily stared at the plaque one last time. The brass caught the light, glinting gold across her reflection. From somewhere in the back, a child's voice rose, reading haltingly but clearly. When you are kind, the world feels lighter. Emily closed her eyes, listening. Somewhere miles away, June smiled, and the world, for once, stayed quiet. The folding chairs creaked under the weight of winter coats and soft whispers. The community center wasn't built for events like this, not really. It still smelled faintly of floor wax and instant coffee, and the PA system crackled every time someone breathed near the mic. But the place was packed. Kids from the library's new program sat cross-legged near the front. Librarians stood in the back with clipboards and tissue packs. Town council members in outdated suits lined the wall like forgotten portraits. And in the front row, Emily. She sat with her hands clasped in her lap, every knuckle pale with tension, but her eyes never left the stage. Then June stepped up to the podium. No cue cards, no written speech. Just a navy cardigan over her shoulders and a look in her eyes that said everything I needed to say, I already did, with my life. She adjusted the microphone. It squealed once, then settled. I've never been much of a speaker, June said, steady. I've always believed the truest things are the ones you don't have to say out loud. A few quiet chuckles, a few nods. But sometimes silence can be mistaken for surrender, or for weakness, and that's not what this is. Not today. Emily sat taller. June scanned the crowd, but not in search of anyone, just to anchor herself. We don't always get to choose our family, she continued, but we do choose what we leave behind. And that, I've decided, is where my voice goes. She let that sit for a moment. I chose to leave behind something that outlives me, not a house, not furniture, not jewelry, but pages, stories, space for someone else to find a story that might save them. No names, no need. Those who needed to hear it were already too far gone to understand. From the back of the room, near the fire exit, Riley stood. Not a guest, not listed, not invited. She wore black sunglasses inside. Her arms were crossed tightly across her chest, phone clutched like a lifeline she didn't know how to use anymore. She didn't cry, didn't blink, just watched. Emily turned once, saw her. Didn't flinch. On the sidewalk outside, in the front seat of her parked car, Heather sat staring through the windshield. Her eyes were red. Her lip trembled every few seconds, but she never moved to wipe it. She whispered, barely audible even to herself. She didn't even look at us. She hadn't. Not once. Inside, June turned slightly and nodded to the librarian beside her. A draped cloth was pulled away from the wall, unveiling the permanent bronze plaque, the Abbott Literacy Center in honor of June, and Emily, for those who stay to listen. The applause rose like a wave, not thunderous, but warm. Earned. Emily stood, gently taking June's hand. They stood side by side as the crowd kept clapping. For a moment, Emily thought her mother might cry. But she didn't. She smiled, not wide, but real. From the back, Grace Tucker leaned toward her friend, her voice low but crisp. She's never looked freer. The audience began to settle again. Outside, Riley turned and walked away without a word. Inside the car, Heather let her forehead fall to the steering wheel. And in that community center, something final closed. Not loudly, not cruelly, just cleanly. As people trickled out, shaking hands and dabbing their eyes, June remained seated in the front row, quietly folding the program in her lap. Emily sat beside her, quiet. Then June leaned over. "They think that was the ending," she whispered. Emily looked at her, brow furrowed. "It wasn't?" June's lips curled into something unreadable. "No," she said. "That was just the curtain." Then she reached into her coat pocket and slid Emily a letter. Unmarked, unfolded. No explanation. Just a name on the first line. Daniel Rhodes. It came in the smallest envelope. No return address, no flourish. Just June's name written in blue ink on the front. Steady, careful, unmistakably Emily's. Inside was a single card. Handmade. The kind that didn't scream gratitude, but whispered it. Pressed lavender in one corner, a tiny ribbon glued at the fold. Inside, just one line. "You never stopped showing up." Even when they laughed. June sat with it in her lap for a full 5 minutes, unmoving, not even blinking. Then she stood, slow and certain, and crossed the living room. On the mantel, next to her faded wedding photo, sun-washed and curled at the edges, she slid the card into place, right beside it, not replacing, just updating the frame of reference. That photo had been her anchor for 50 years. Now it had company. Outside, the cold pressed against the windows, but inside, the heater buzzed low, and the house smelled like cinnamon and old wood. Carmen arrived just after 3, carrying a tin of lemon cookies and a bottle of root beer. "Thought we could rot our teeth in our standards at the same time," she said, letting herself in. They spent the afternoon wrapped in throw blankets, watching old black and white screwball comedies on the tiny TV in June's den. The dialogue was fast, the morals blurry, the laughter easy. It was almost enough to forget the names Riley and Heather. Almost. During a commercial break, June reached for the thick manila envelope on her side table and pulled out a single sheet. "Emergency contact form," she said softly. Carmen raised an eyebrow. "For what?" You planning something reckless? Planning something responsible, June corrected. She handed over the form, already filled. Name, Emily Abbott, relationship, daughter phone, primary, only. Simple enough, Carmen said, but her throat tightened at the sight of the empty second line. No backup contact, no alternates, just Emily. That night, June boiled a small pot of lentil soup and poured herself a half glass of red wine. She was mid-sip when her phone buzzed against the counter. Riley, a new number, but the tone was unmistakable. Can we talk? June stared at it. No punctuation, no apology, no change. She tapped the screen once, blocked, no drama, no retaliation, just an off switch, quiet and complete. She returned to her soup. It tasted better without the interruption. Across town, Tommy stood in his garage with a space heater humming and papers spread across the workbench. He was on the phone with June. Okay, he said, flipping the final page. Trust updates are locked. Nobody can contest it without going through 3 counties worth of judges, and I filed it in digital and print with both the bank and the law office. June's voice crackled on speaker. And the contingency protections. Active as of this morning, Tommy said. If something happens to you, it all funnels into the literacy program unless Emily chooses to keep it. No one else touches a dime. June let out a long breath. Thank you, Tommy sipped his coffee. You okay? I am now, he smiled. Then we're both out of work. They hung up without ceremony. Across town, Heather stared at her phone, watching the chat thread she'd started with Riley go increasingly cold. Heather, she cut me out, Heather. Did she cut you out too? Heather. Riley, no reply. At June's house, the wind picked up just after midnight. Tree branches tapped the windows like soft reminders that even quiet lives can shake. Emily, wrapped in her robe, came down to check the locks before bed and noticed something new on the counter. The letter June had passed her after the speech, still unopened, still waiting. She picked it up, ran her thumb along the edge. Then she opened it. Her eyes flicked across the lines, then paused, stared. Across the hall, June stood silently in the doorway. You found it, she said. Emily looked up. Who is Daniel Rhodes? She asked. June didn't answer. She just walked forward, slow and deliberate, and took a seat at the kitchen table like she was settling in for court. It's time, she said. I'll tell you everything. By Thursday morning, the lie had gone public. It started with a GoFundMe link that appeared in the local Facebook community group. Support Heather and Matt after unfair family betrayal. Heather's profile picture, perfect hair, red scarf, that tight smile she reserved for PTA photos, sat beside a long paragraph about heartbreak, sacrifice, and injustice. After years of caring for my mother-in-law, we've been left with nothing. She disinherited us out of spite, leaving our family without the home we helped her maintain. We never asked for much, just fairness. A photo accompanied the post, Heather and Riley at June's old dining table, pretending to pack boxes. Riley looked caught mid-blink, which somehow made the whole thing seem more real, more tragic. By noon, the campaign had already hit $4,800. By 2 p.m., the comments had turned. Karen Duncan. Funny how you call it caring for her when everyone saw you at brunch every Sunday. Beverly McCall. Didn't you post that mug calling her the problem? Seems like she just agreed. Hal from the church. Y'all really thought the internet wouldn't remember screenshots? Local librarian, verified. That spite donation helped 47 kids start reading this month. Bless your heart. Within an hour, receipts started flooding in. Literal screenshots of Riley's Facebook posts, Heather's comments. Even text threads leaked from their old group chat. Heather had underestimated small-town justice. By dinner time, someone had edited her GoFundMe title to When Greed Meets Wi-Fi. Riley tried to backpedal, commenting under a burner account. Anonymous. Mom 78. We don't know the full story, but everyone knew. The story had been public since Christmas. The donations stopped at $4,112. Then the refund requests started rolling in. By nightfall, the campaign was deleted. Vanished. But screenshots. Oh, those don't vanish in this town. Tommy saw it before June did. He printed the entire thing, every fake sentence, every angry comment, every receipt of truth, and drove straight to Carmen's. He found June at the kitchen table, reading glasses perched low. Emily beside her with a mug of tea. Tommy dropped the folder in front of her. They tried to crowdfund your forgiveness. June's eyebrow lifted just enough to count as surprise. Did it work? They burned the bridge, Tommy said, sliding the folder open. And now they're drowning in the smoke. Carmen chuckled from the stove. Good headline. I'd pay to see that printed. June skimmed the pages. Heather's opening paragraph. The photo. The pity tone so thick it almost dripped. She didn't flinch, didn't sigh, just reached for the printer paper still warm in her hands, folded it neatly in half, then in half again. She stood, walked to the fireplace, and knelt. The logs were already glowing from the morning chill. She tossed the folded page in. It curled black in seconds, the ink twisting into smoke, lifting into the chimney like a benediction she never asked for. Emily watched her quietly. You okay? June stayed still, eyes fixed on the flame. Better than I've been in years. The fire popped softly, sending a thin thread of ash upward. Carmen joined her at the hearth, setting down a new batch of cookies on the table. You sure you don't want to frame that? As a warning, June smiled faintly. No need. They already framed themselves. Tommy laughed under his breath. Remind me never to cross you, Abbott. June stood, dusting her hands. You're safe. You helped build the bridge I wanted to burn. They shared a quiet look, the kind of understanding that doesn't need ceremony. Emily gathered the last few printouts, still unburned, and stacked them on the counter. You want me to shred these? No, June said. Keep one. For what? In case they ever forget what truth looks like. Outside, snow had started again, light, dry, relentless. The kind that blanketed everything in silence and erased footprints by morning. Tommy zipped up his coat. Looks like the season's closing out just how it started. June nodded. Cold, but clean. He hesitated at the door. You ready for what's next? June turned toward the window, where the frost had begun to creep along the edges of the glass. Daniel Rhodes is next, she said, quietly. And this time, I'm not writing letters. The envelope came on a Tuesday, pale yellow, addressed by hand. Inside, a note from the principal of the local elementary school, formally requesting June Abbott's help. With the success of the new reading program, we'd be honored to have you as a volunteer in our reading recovery classroom. The children need patient hands, familiar voices, people who understand how to stay. It didn't ask for money or reputation, just time. June ran her finger along the crease of the paper and folded it twice, placing it on the kitchen table like something too delicate to dismiss. Carmen read it next, cheeks puffed as she finished the last bite of her muffin. Well, look at that, she said, wiping her mouth. They figured out what we already knew. I haven't stepped inside a school in 15 years, June said, half to herself. Then you're due, Carmen said. Not for them, for you. The first day back felt like walking into a memory she hadn't stored on purpose. The hallway still smelled like crayons, hand sanitizer, and pencil shavings. Bulletin boards lined the walls, decorated in lopsided turkeys and motivational quotes cut from cardstock. Children's laughter echoed faintly, blending with the squeak of sneakers and the low hum of the old radiator. A teacher's aide met her near the front desk and led her to room 3A. The students are reading below grade level, the aide explained. Most of them don't sit still long, don't trust long. But if they latch onto someone, they latch hard. June smiled softly. Sounds familiar. Inside the room, 5 children sat at 2 tables. One chewed on the end of a pencil. Another bounced his knees so hard the entire table rattled. No one looked up when she walked in. She didn't introduce herself, didn't ask for attention. She just sat, opened Charlotte's Web, and started reading. By page 3, the pencil chewer had stopped chewing. By page 7, the knee bouncer had gone still. By page 12, a small hand touched her elbow. She looked down. A little girl, freckles, crooked bangs, whispered, "Can you read that part again?" June did. By the end of the session, the same little girl hugged her so tightly around the waist, June had to brace her knees to stay upright. "I like your voice," the girl said. "It makes words sound like they matter." June said nothing, just patted the child's head and blinked more than usual. That evening, Carmen arrived unannounced with dinner in foil trays and watery eyes. "They hugged you on day one?" she asked, grinning so wide it looked like it hurt. June nodded, already halfway through reheating lasagna. "Nearly knocked me over." Carmen's voice turned soft. "You built something even now." June wiped her hands and leaned against the counter. "That's what legacy means," she whispered. "It's not what they take from you, it's what you leave in them." They ate quietly. No one mentioned Heather, or Riley, or the folder still tucked into Emily's cabinet with Daniel Rhodes' name on it. But it sat between them anyway, waiting. On Friday afternoon, after June finished her 4th session, Emily arrived outside the school building holding a modest bouquet, daisies and eucalyptus, tied with a strip of muslin. "I didn't know what kind you liked," she said, a little shy. June took them like a priceless relic. "You brought flowers." "You brought stories," Emily replied. They sat together on the front bench as the final bell rang and kids exploded from the doors like popcorn. One child stopped to wave. Another ran by and shouted, "Bye, Miss June." June's smile didn't fade. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Emily asked. June nodded. "Feels honest." A pause. Then Emily leaned in slightly. "You don't have to tell me what's in the letter, not yet. But when you're ready?" "I'm close," June said. "It's a mess, what's in there. But I'm not afraid of it anymore." They watched the kids tumble into their parents' cars. One boy stopped to chase his own hat as it flew off in the wind. "Daniel Rhodes," June said suddenly. "He's not who they thought. He wasn't just some old debt. He was part of the fracture." Emily looked at her. "He's still alive," June added. "And he still owes you?" Emily asked gently. "No," June said, rising from the bench. "He owes you." The knock came just after sunset. Not the sharp kind that meant urgency or the rhythmic kind that meant company. This one was hesitant, measured, practiced. June had been expecting it anyway. She turned off the stovetop, the last of the soup still steaming in the pot, and wiped her hands on a towel before crossing the kitchen. When she opened the door, Riley stood on the porch. The wind had turned bitter again, pushing the last of the autumn leaves across the gravel drive. Riley's hair whipped against her face, her eyes glassy, jaw tight. She looked older than her years, like time had started collecting interest on everything she'd refused to pay. "Can I come in?" she asked. June studied her for a moment, then stepped aside. "You're already halfway there." Riley stepped into the warmth, stamping her boots against the mat. The air between them felt like a memory, thick with things unsaid. June gestured toward the table. "Soup's still warm if you want some." "I'm fine," Riley said. Her voice cracked halfway through the lie. June poured herself a bowl and sat. "Then sit anyway. Standing makes people defensive." Riley hesitated, then pulled out the chair opposite her mother and sank into it. She stared at the steam curling from June's spoon, her hands twisting the strap of her purse until the leather squeaked, finally. "You really left us with nothing." June didn't look up right away. She took a slow sip first, as if tasting her own patience. Then, softly, "No, I left you with the parts of me you never said thank you for." Riley's mouth opened, then closed again. Her throat moved like she'd swallowed something too sharp. "That's not fair," she whispered. "Neither was the laughter," June said, setting down her spoon. "But we all learn to live with what we've earned." For a long time, only the ticking clock filled the room. Riley's shoulders began to tremble, barely noticeable at first. Then the tears came, sudden, messy, unstoppable. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth as if to hide them, but the sound escaped anyway. June didn't move, didn't rush to comfort, didn't twist the moment into sentiment. She simply sat there, steady, unmoved, watching her daughter unravel in the same room she'd once watched her children fight over chores and curfews and car keys. When Riley finally looked up, her eyes were red. "You don't even care, do you?" June's tone was quiet, almost kind. "I stopped confusing guilt with love a long time ago." Riley let out a low, bitter laugh, halfway between disbelief and surrender. "You really think you're the hero in all this?" "No," June said, shaking her head. "I think I'm finally not the villain." Riley's chest hitched again. Her voice turned small, almost childlike. "What am I supposed to do now?" June stood. walked to the counter and poured a second mug of tea, hers untouched, the other steaming and golden. She set it in front of her daughter. "Tell your daughter I said hello," she said. "That's all." Riley blinked, stunned. You don't even want to see her." June's gaze softened just a fraction. "When she's old enough to ask who I was, give her the honest version. That'll be enough of a visit." Riley's breath caught. Then she nodded, once mechanical, like someone accepting a verdict they'd already known was coming. She stood, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand, and slung the purse back over her shoulder. At the door, she paused. "You really mean it? You're not angry anymore?" June shook her head. "Anger's heavy. I just set it down before it buried me." Riley hesitated another second. But June didn't add anything, didn't rescue her from the silence. She simply watched her daughter open the door and step back into the dark, her shadow stretching long and thin across the porch before the night swallowed it. June waited until the crunch of gravel faded completely. Then she exhaled once, deep, quiet, final. She closed the door. The lock clicked softly into place. Then she turned back to the stove, ladled the rest of the soup into 2 bowls, and carried one down the hallway. Emily was sitting up in the den, reading Charlotte's Web to herself, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. June handed her the bowl, wordless. Emily smiled. "You okay?" June nodded, easing herself onto the couch beside her. "Better than I've been in a long time." Outside, the wind howled once, then moved on. The house didn't shake this time. It simply stood. The snow had started to melt in slow, tired patches. It was early afternoon, one of those quiet winter days when time felt suspended. No wind, no noise, just the slow drip from the eaves and the muffled thud of soft boots returning from the mailbox. June held a small brown box in her gloved hands. No return address, no frills, just Abbott written in neat black ink across the top. She brought it inside, set it on the kitchen counter, and opened it. Inside, a ceramic mug, hand-fired, soft gray glaze, simple block lettering. "I did it quietly," June smiled. Small, private, no note inside. Just the mug. She turned it in her hands once, then again before walking it to the mantel. She cleared a small space beside the framed photo of Emily from her college graduation. Cap crooked, cheeks flushed, eyes wide with some mix of fear and hope. The kind of photo you only understood later when you'd earned some of the answers. June placed the mug there and stepped back. Carmen arrived not long after, bundled in scarves and holding a grocery bag filled with peppermint bark and last-minute clearance wrapping paper. "I got all the good stuff for half off," she announced. "Capitalism may rot our souls, but it does do holiday markdowns right." June chuckled. "Coffee?" "Always." They sat at the table while the kettle whistled and the daylight faded without permission. The living room still carried echoes of the season. Half a box of ornaments, a few knotted light strands that no one ever rolled properly, and the faint scent of pine needles from the now naked tree leaning slightly in the corner. Carmen glanced toward the mantel, squinting. "New mug?" June followed her gaze. "Gift." "From Emily?" June shook her head. "No, doesn't matter who from." Carmen poured her tea and leaned back in the chair. "You regret any of it?" June took a moment, stirred her tea, tapped the spoon twice against the rim before answering. "Only not sooner." That hung in the air between them, clean, unapologetic, true. After a while, Carmen stood and began gathering the ornaments. She wound the old garland slowly, like handling something fragile and unnecessary. June joined her, and together they packed Christmas away. Box by box, year by year, memory by memory. The mug stayed out. No one said it aloud, but they both knew. That one wasn't for storage. It was a marker, a quiet declaration. When they finished, Carmen slipped on her coat and stood in the doorway, watching the snow melt in tiny rivers along the sidewalk. "You think they'll come around eventually?" she asked. June didn't answer right away. She walked to the mantel again, touched the mug like it might vanish if she blinked. "They'll circle the truth," she said. "Like moths, but they'll never land on it." "It burns," Carmen nodded. "And Emily?" "She walks forward now," June said. "Not behind me, not under me, beside." Carmen smiled and slipped out into the quiet. June locked the door behind her, not like a barricade, but like a seal. Something finished, something safe. Later that night, Emily came by with a tin of gingerbread cookies and a card that just read, "Next year, my place." June tucked it beside the mug. The house was quiet now. No TV, no wind, no interruptions. Only the soft hum of a furnace doing its job, and the weightless hush of a woman who had nothing left to prove. June moved through the kitchen, switching off lights, folding towels, setting a new book on the nightstand. She didn't move slower, she moved lighter. She walked her path now with no weight but peace. As she turned in for the night, the hallway caught her reflection in the mirror. Hair silver, eyes clear, back straight. She didn't stop to admire it. She just paused, reached for the lamp, and whispered the last truth the house would ever need to hear. At Christmas, they gave me a mug that said, "Reason for all problems." They stopped joking when they read the will I signed that morning. And with that, the light went out.